Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We have a total lunar eclipse, a blood moon, coming up on March 3rd at 11:34 a.m. Universal Time, meaning that Europe and Africa will not see this celestial event, but the rest of the globe will see some or all of it. And it's going to be centered almost perfectly over the Hawaiian Islands. And well, it appears there's an interesting energetic convergence that is likely to occur during this total blood moon lunar eclipse. Remember, this is a full moon. So at night, the moon will be shining up overhead, and then it will pass into Earth's shadow because there'll be a perfect alignment between the sun, the Earth, and the moon. And as a result of it being on the other side of the Earth, it's typically reflecting sunlight back towards us. This is a heightened energetic moment in general. Full moons are every 28 days, but then it'll pass into the shadow created by the Earth from that sunlight. As a result, it will only glow a dull, diffuse red color because, well, it's only reflecting a little bit of Earth light back to us. And well, Hawaii being almost exactly at the apex of this total lunar eclipse also has been having eruptions at Kilauea Volcano now since December 23rd of 2024. There have been 42 episodic eruptions, and while I did the math, the average recurrence rate for the past 9 eruptions would have the next one occur on March 3rd, and they last about 8 to 12 hours. So it is highly possible. It's in fact the most likely outcome of all the different probabilities. We'll see what actually happens, but it's the most likely outcome that as the moon is overhead and it turns a blood red hue, that Kilauea volcano will erupt spectacularly. And as many of you know, and as you've been tracking here on the channel, the eruptions at Kilauea keep getting bigger and bigger. So a rare celestial and geo event could come together for the Hawaiian Islands in just a few days, but this will be viewable, of course, this total lunar eclipse, this blood moon, from most of North America, South America, and also East Asia. So with that, let's jump right into it. Here we have our visibility map for this total lunar eclipse, and this shaded section here shows when the entire eclipse is visible from its beginning to its end. You'll notice it's centered directly over the Pacific Ocean. If we flip this around, you'll notice that the only locations that aren't going to be seeing this eclipse at all are Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So if you go back, I'll explain these shaded colors here. I wish they use a bit of a better color scheme, but regardless, it's going to be completely visible for the Pacific Ocean. Even if we take Hawaii out of the equation, I talked about that potential convergence between Kilauea erupting and this blood moon. Well, we've been having tons of earthquake and volcanic activity around the Ring of Fire for the past month or so. It's really been notable for the past week. We had just some eruptions recently at Vanuatu. This follows after a magnitude 6.4 earthquake there. We've had some deep earthquakes around Fiji. We just had that magnitude 7.1 deep earthquake, Malaysia. So there's been a tremendous amount of energetic activity in this part of the Ring of Fire, and this is where this total lunar eclipse is going to be seen from. But we have this interesting energetic convergence coming up for Hawaii because the average reoccurrence interval for these eruptions recently has been 13 days. And the last one finished right on the 16th of February. So you do 16 plus 13 takes you to March 3rd. So we'll talk about that more later. But here we see that it's going to be visible for much of North America. So this is where there's no visibility, okay? Then you'll see that some of the penumbral eclipse is visible. We'll discuss the different types of visibility for this next. And we see only some of the partial penumbral, but then basically once we get to here, you'll have some of the total eclipse visible, and the west coast of the United States will have the entire eclipse visible. So they'll see it just as good as, let's say, Hawaii or other parts in the Pacific. The eastern coast of Australia, all of New Zealand will see the entire eclipse. Parts of Papua New Guinea, then other locations will see a majority of this total lunar eclipse, but not necessarily the entire thing, where you have the full moon shining bright and then you see the shadow go over it and then it goes away again. Lots of Japan, up to Kamchatka, Alaska, all these locations, the Yukon, Washington, Oregon will see this total lunar eclipse. So in general, these are the zones to watch more carefully if you're considering the energetic impacts of this total lunar eclipse, because that is also something to be mindful of. But what I'm really interested in is this energetic convergence over Hawaii. And here we have our map showing the different shadow regions created by the Earth. So we see the moon here. It's going to be basically a full moon overhead, really bright, reflecting that sunlight, but then it'll start to move into the penumbra, which is this faint, wide shadow created by the Earth. And then there's a more focused, deep shadow called the umbra. And it's when the moon moves into the umbra that turns this blood red color. Now, the sun is, of course, always shining light, and the Earth and other planets are always orbiting around it. Every single object in our solar system creates a shadow behind it. So with the lunar eclipses, it's really a question of, is the moon happening to intersect that shadow? Because it's going to be exactly along the ecliptic plane where it slices through, it has this inclination to its orbit, it's going to go right through. We will have the moon cut through and we see this umbra there. It's about an hour long for totality, as you can see. 11:34 a.m. Universal Time is when it'll be peak totality, and that is 1:34 a.m. for Hawaii. So it'll be really interesting to see if Kilauea does erupt then. Because recently the lava fountain events have been getting very, very tall, 300 meters. 350 meters, 400, 450 meters tall. This is like 1,500 plus feet. And if all of a sudden that does converge, it's going to be incredible to see these lava fountains go up 1,000, maybe even 2,000 feet in the darkness as the blood moon is shining overhead. That is certainly a possibility. If you happen to live on the Big Island, you're a photographer, plan for this as best you can, because it's, I think, pretty likely. And here we have an Earth focus map for this total lunar eclipse, so we can see how the visibility is across the globe. And so parts of the globe will see the penumbra eclipse, and really it's not going to look all that different. But then you'll start to get a partial eclipse, as we can see here. Then you'll actually get the total eclipse right there when it turns a blood red color. So you see that most of North America will see that. South America will really only see the partial and the penumbral part. But then the total eclipse ends, and then it's going to go through its phasing again with the partial to the penumbral. So a lot of the world's population will be seeing this, but if you happen to be in Europe, or Middle East, or Africa, hey, you're not going to see it. I'm not going to see it. I'm right now in Europe. So I'll be exactly on the opposite side of the globe, on the side of the sun, when this full blood moon eclipse occurs. Now, a blood moon total lunar eclipse is already a very powerful energetic moment, but it could be compounded even further exponentially if this eruption at Kilauea occurs. This would be episode 43. Here we see our eruption data. We see it going all the way back to December of 2024 when these episodic eruptions started. This isn't that common, by the way. This is quite rare. Interesting that this occurred right with the Pluto return of Captain Cook's first visit to Hawaii. That's interesting. But regardless, we see that it's had effectively a pretty steady reoccurrence interval, though it has been lengthening out. They've been getting bigger and taller, more explosive, and just in general, more intense over the past 6 months or so. And this was episode 42 right here. We can see episode 42 was higher up in its tilt than these past two, also went down further, showing just how big of an eruption that was. And so there has been a lengthening of this time cycle here, but sometimes it goes short. So the past 9 eruptions, going from 42 to 33, have had an average recurrence interval of 16.3 days, because it's 22 and 12 and 19 days, 17 days, 10 days, 16, 22, 17, 12. You just basically see that there's quite a range of about 10 to 22 days in between. That average is 16.2. If you take when episode 42 ended, which is right on the 16th, then you carry that forward, that takes it right to March 3rd. And so we could be seeing this, except at nighttime with the blood moon overhead. Now there is a pretty wide range to that reoccurrence interval. So it's going to really have to speed up a bit to get to 16 days or not inflate as much as prior eruptions. So it may not be as explosive as episode 41 and 42 were, which were historic in some aspects. But it's certainly possible. And if you look at just kind of the timeline of eruptions at Kilauea, you find that often Kilauea erupts with geomagnetic storms, either during or just afterwards. And she also seems to have this resonance with other celestial events. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pele, the lava fire goddess, if she decides to come out for the blood moon. I really wouldn't be surprised at all. It's all, at least right now, forecasting highest probability to look like it's going to occur simultaneously. That is certainly possible, and it could be one of the craziest things that's ever been seen there, right? To see the blood moon and also these 1,500 feet tall plus lava fountains exploding at the same time from Kilauea. And just to show you our true sky astronomical chart for this geocentrically, we have this set to Hilo, Hawaii, which is fairly close to Kilauea. And this is set for the peak of this blood moon, which is 1:34 a.m. local time in Hawaii. We see the moon overhead there in the constellation of Leo. We're looking at actual constellations in the sky, all 13 that cut through and intersect the ecliptic plane, true to size. So we see that the moon is in the constellation of Leo. It'll be in the sign of Virgo. And then we see all these planets here grouped around the sun at the bottom of the chart. So this is also very interesting because this is typically showing what's overhead, what's visible to the public, for example. That's like the top of the chart. And then the bottom is what's happening underneath the surface. And so you see here on the other side of the Earth, right? This is going to be Africa, Erupt. You have the sun, but you also have all the other planets grouped over there as well. So there's going to be these planetary and solar influences pushing through the solid Earth, and then the moon will be pulling that energy up to its full moon, right? And you'll have Hawaii there, a hot spot, which is already a conductive flow of energy from the core and through the mantle. And then you'll have the moon go exactly along the ecliptic plane, turn a blood red color. So this is very interesting because you also have Venus close here. Venus is associated with wealth and money and relationships and things of this nature. And there's been a big economic boom on the Big Island because of these episodic eruptions. The fact that they've been fairly regular means that a lot of people have been coming in around the globe to see them. Car rental prices are going up, house prices like rentals, Airbnbs and stuff, that's all going up. We have Mars close by. Mars is this energy of making things a little bit more intense and even violent, let's say. We see sometimes with Mars alignments, big earthquakes. So we have Mars there at the bottom of the chart. Here's Mercury associated with communication. Here I am telling you about this. We also have Saturn and Neptune. Neptune is the oceans. Hawaii is smack dab in the Pacific. Saturn is the solid Earth connected to that. All of them converging at the bottom of the chart, speaking to a big, powerful conglomeration of energy coming up from below, and then Kilauea could be that expression of energy coming up. So that is quite interesting. Jupiter will be fairly close to the horizon, shining very brightly when that occurs. And we also have these harmonic aspects with Uranus and Pluto to Saturn and Neptune, which the sun is approaching. We're going to have this big convergence of all of these planets going through March and April. So I think it's likely it's going to occur at the same time. It's not guaranteed. There are many other possibilities. Again, that range for eruptions at Kilauea for the past 9 has been 10 days in between, up to 22 days in between. So that is quite the range. But that reoccurrence interval is 16.3 days for the past 9, and that is exactly with the blood moon since the last one ended, episode 42, on the 16th of February. And if you're wondering why we don't have eclipses every single new moon or full moon, well, there's a good reason for that. It's because the moon has an inclination in its orbit relative to the ecliptic plane. So there's this flat plane that exists between the Earth and the Sun. You can draw a plane between any point, but the Earth-Sun plane, the ecliptic plane, is very important for us. We see that the lunar orbit is inclined about 5.15 degrees from that. So there's times where it'll intersect the ecliptic plane, and those locations are called the nodes. We have the descending south node, the ascending north node, so the moon is going up and it passes through the ecliptic plane. That's it passing by its ascending north node, and when it's going down through the ecliptic plane, that's its descending south node. And which node aligns with the sun depends on where the Earth is in its orbit. So this lunar eclipse, it's the descending south node on this side because effectively the Earth is on the other side of its orbit with the sun. But the moon often is full moon, for example, here when it's inclined well above the ecliptic plane. So that's why we're able to have moonlight shine, and it'll show up a little bit different in the sky depending on whether it's above or below the ecliptic plane. But when we have it, for example, be a full moon right along that nodal point, it'll be along the ecliptic plane. That allows it to pass into Earth's shadow. Or if it's a solar eclipse, the moon will come in here like this, swing into that alignment in between the Earth and Sun, perfectly blocking out the sun. So the north node and the south node are exactly 180 degrees opposite one another. They move through the zodiac in retrograde fashion. It takes them about 18.6 years to complete an entire rotation. So it takes some time, and that will change where these eclipses occur relative to the constellations, or if you use Western tropical astrology, the signs. And it's along these nodes that eclipses occur. And because there is this movement to them, eclipses don't occur at the same time every year. Right now they're occurring in February and March, and we'll have some eclipses coming up in August, but sometimes they line up with equinoxes and solstices. Other times they're always varying. You can have an eclipse at any time. It just depends on where the nodal points are. And again, that's an 18.6 year cycle. So that's some of the science of eclipses. And just really keep in mind, if you've been wondering about the moon and some of its shenanigans, is that it has a 5.15 degree inclination to its orbit, which is why sometimes it appears higher in the sky or lower down than you would otherwise think. And then you add in orbital variations with the Earth to the sun, and it can get a little wild. But in general, it's following along this orbit, and it's a pretty predictable, forecastable thing. And so we'll see how close I am with my forecast. I do think it is most likely that episode 43 at Kilauea will erupt as the eclipse is going on, and hopefully as the blood moon is overhead. But there is quite a wide range of reoccurrence intervals for these eruptions at Kilauea. Again, just the past 9, it's been 10 days in between, up to 22 days in between. So that average perfectly aligns it with the blood moon, but it could be 15 days, it could be 12 days. Like, we don't exactly know. So hopefully it lines up, just because anyone there is going to be in for something that's absolutely mind-blowing. I wish I could be there to see that, but I'm sure we'll get some amazing imagery of that if it is to occur. And in general, I will keep you up to date on what is happening at Hawaii. We broadcast these eruptions as they occur thanks to the live streams from the USGS. So that is your update for today. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with what is happening with the Earth energetically, what's occurring on the sun with solar activity, what's happening with our planets, and what's happening in interstellar and cosmic space, and please subscribe to the channel. I bring all that together, present videos almost daily. If you have the ability to see this lunar eclipse, make sure to do so. It's going to be quite easy. Just go outside, hopefully you have clear weather, look at the moon. Ideally you have binoculars. If you're really lucky, you have a telescope too, but you'll be able to see it, of course, with your naked eye. It's really quite cool to see the moon turn a blood red color. So hopefully, we don't get any crazy thing to occur, like some massive earthquake to line up with the eclipse. That is something that isn't necessarily proven. Some people talk about eclipses and earthquakes. We do see earthquakes align with lunar phases. For example, they're more likely during new moons and full moons, but there isn't any data showing a stronger correlation with eclipses specifically. So we are already going to have a slight increase in earthquake potential activation because it's a full moon, but because it being an eclipse, that doesn't seem to influence earthquake activity in a measurable way. But you never know. The energies can get wild. I never put it past the Earth or the cosmos to surprise us. So I will keep you up to date with everything that's happening. Thanks so much for watching. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video.